The posting of the new decree, so horsemen were sent out quickly to carry out the king's commands, and the decree was also posted in Susa. Then Mordecai went out robed in royal raiment, having a gold crown and a diadem of fine purple linen, and seeing him, the people of Susa rejoiced. And there was light and gladness for the Jews. In every city and province where the decree was published, where the proclamation was posted, there was joy and gladness among the Jews, feasting and good cheer. And many of the Gentiles were circumcised and lived in the Jewish way, because of fear of the Jews. The Jews defeat their enemies. Now in the 12th month, on the 13th day of the month of Adar, the decree written by the king arrived. On that day those in opposition were destroyed by the Jews, for fearing them, no one resisted. For the leaders of the satraps, the sovereigns, and the royal scribes honored the Jews, and the fear of Mordecai weighed on them, for the order of the king had come down that Mordecai should be acknowledged throughout the kingdom. And in the city of Susa, the Jews killed 500 men. These included Parshandatha, Dalphon, Aspata, Poratha, Adaliah, Aridatha, Parmashta, Arisiah, Ariday, and Bahijatha, the 10 sons of Haman, son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews. They ravaged them. On that day, the number of those killed in Susa was reported to the king. Then the king said to Esther, "The Jews have killed 500 men in the city of Susa. How do you think they have made out in the surrounding lands? What more do you yet desire, so that it will be done for you?" Esther said to the king, "Let the Jews be granted the opportunity to do the same tomorrow in order to hang the sons of Haman." And he permitted this to be done, and he set out for the Jews of the city the bodies of the sons of Haman to hang. Then the Jews gathered together in Susa on the 14th of Adar and killed 300 men, but they plundered nothing. The rest of the Jews throughout the kingdom assembled and came to the aid of one another, and they had rest from their enemies, for they killed 15,000 of them on the 13th of Adar, but they plundered nothing. Then they rested on the 14th of that month, and observed it as a day of rest with joy and gladness. And the Jews in the city of Susa also gathered together on the 14th, but did not rest from their enemies, but they observed the 15th with joy and gladness. This is why the Jews scattered in every foreign land observe the 14th of Adar with gladness as a holiday, sending parcels to their neighbors. But those living in the major cities keep the 15th of Adar as a holiday, sending parcels to their neighbors. The feast of Purim. Mordecai wrote these things in a book and sent it to all the Jews in the kingdom of Artaxerxes, to those both near and far, to establish these days as holidays, and to observe both the 14th and 15th day of Adar, for on these days the Jews had rest from their enemies. Thus Adar is the month which was turned from mourning into joy, and from grief into a holiday, to celebrate the whole time with feasting and gladness, sending parcels to friends and to the poor. The Jews accepted everything just as Mordecai wrote to them, how Haman the son of Hammedatha, the Macedonian, warred against them, how he had made a decree and cast lots to exterminate them, how he had gone to the king telling him to hang Mordecai, and how all the evils he plotted against the Jews came upon himself, and how he was hanged, he and his children. Therefore these days were called Purim on account of the lots, because in their language they are called Pur, because of the words of this letter, and because of all they had suffered on account of these things and all that had happened to them. Mordecai established it, and the Jews took it upon themselves, their descendants, and upon those joining with them not to do otherwise. And these days are to be a memorial throughout every generation, and city, and family, and province. Thus these days of Purim shall be observed forever, and their remembrance shall not cease in any generation. Then Queen Esther, daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Jew wrote down the many things they had done and the truthfulness of the command of Purim. And Mordecai and Queen Esther established it for themselves, establishing it at that time according to their soundness of mind and their purpose. Esther established it by a command forever, and it was written for a memorial. And the king levied tribute upon his kingdom both by land and sea. And his power and valor, the riches and the glory of his kingdom, behold, they are written in the book of the kings of Persia and Media for a memorial. And Mordecai was next to King Artaxerxes, and he was great in the kingdom and honored by the Jews, and being beloved, he set forth in detail the way of life to all his people. Epilogue. And Mordecai said, "These things were from my God. For I recall the dream which I had concerning these things, and not one detail of them has failed. There was a small spring that became a river, there was light and the sun and much water. The river is Esther, whom the king married and made queen. The two serpents are Haman and I. The nations are the Gentiles gathering together to destroy the name of the Jews. And my nation, which cried out to God and was delivered, is Israel. For the Lord has saved his people, and the Lord has rescued us from all these evils. And God performed signs and great wonders, which have not happened among the Gentiles. On account of this, he made 2 lots, one for the people of God and one for the Gentiles. And these 2 lots came in the hour, and in the time, and in the day of judgment before God and among all the Gentiles. And God remembered his people and vindicated his inheritance. And they shall observe these days in the month of Adar, the 14th and 15th day of that month. They shall gather together with joy and gladness before God throughout all generations forever among his people Israel. In the 4th year of the reign of Ptolemy and Cleopatra, Dositheus, who said he was a priest and a Levite, and Ptolemy his son brought in the letter of Purim, which they declared existed, and that Lysimachus, the son of Ptolemy, who was in Jerusalem, had translated it. Notes from the previous pages. 812 our deliverer and constant benefactor, see note at 4:1-3. 8:12 this new decree gives royal authority to the Jews to destroy those under Haman's influence and those who would destroy the Jews, see Ephesians 6:12. 8:12 Esther 8:12 12t, victory is already assumed, and deliverance will be received by both the Jews and the well-inclined Persians. 8:16 And there was light and gladness, this recalls the prophetic dream of Mordecai. 1:1j. 8:17 Gentiles were circumcised. It is remarkable how much power of persuasion there is in the works of God. 9:1-16 What is done in secret is shouted from the housetops, Luke 12:3. Haman's plot was made in secret, but now the bodies of his sons are exposed, v. 13, as was his secret plot. See also Luke 8:17. 9:19 It is often noted that the Hebrew version of Esther never mentions the name of God. Since the story was copied and sent to the Jews, both near and far, the name of God would inevitably be omitted, for this name was too sacred to write. It follows that the account Mordecai wrote in a book would not necessarily be worded the same as letters that were widely circulated. Furthermore, with the help of Mordecai, Esther wrote down her own account of the events, v. 30. Thus, there were at least 3 distinct accounts of this story. 9:25 These days were called Purim on account of the lots, because in their language they are called Pur. In 3:7, Haman casts lots to determine the day for the Jews to be massacred. The word Pur is not a Hebrew word in origin. It comes from the Persian or Assyrian and means lot. Thus, it was Haman's lot that established the date for the great Jewish celebration of Purim, which commemorates the deliverance recorded in this book. 10:3a3k Mordecai interprets his dream recorded in the introduction to ch1. This dream was likely on his mind continually as the circumstances unfolded, for not one detail of them has failed, v. 36. 10:3k This indicates the source of the Greek translation of this passage. The 4th year of the reign of Ptolemy would date the translation of this passage from Hebrew to Greek around the year 114 BC.